And I started, I was just so overwhelmed. I wanted to share my faith with everybody. So of course, I started with my parents, with my older brother. And my parents, specifically my father, he became very angry in the beginning. He said, "You destroyed the family, stop with that, new beliefs." And but finally, I started to pray more and more for them. And I gave him, at one point, he started to ask me some questions. And I said, "Dad, please read that book." I gave him The Great Controversy. And after a few weeks, we met in the living room. And he was in tears, he embraced me. And he said, "Timo, now I got it. I understand now." He converted, he came to church, he got Bible studies. Now my mother, she was very desperate, because she thought now her youngest son and her husband is going into that cult. But my father, and this was very important, he said to me, "Do you remember back then when I yelled at you?" Because there was a situation that he was really yelling at me in the living room. And I said, "Of course I remember that. And do you know what made the difference? Why I gave you the chance to investigate?" I said, "What was it?" He said, "I saw how you were standing there and you were not yelling at me because I was used to yell back. And you had tears in your eyes and I saw there was something changed. And I needed to figure out what it is." And there's a principle in Proverbs 15 verse 1 where it says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, a grievous word stir up anger," which is true.
Yeah.
And so by this principle, God used that my father, and then by God's grace, it's a longer story, but to summarize it, my mother, she also kind of gave up of her old life. Both were baptized. I don't have the picture from the baptism anymore. That's why I'm using a picture from vacation. So, and it was just fascinating for me to see how my father, he really got into the Bible. And then my older brother, he was also in the world and he had his own struggles. And I shared with him my faith, and he was sometimes open for it, but sometimes he was very much fighting it. But praise God, after many years of prayer, he finally gave his life to Christ, which was a blessing. And so we're all now in the faith as Seventh-day Adventists, which is really a blessing. And then I remember one of my closest friends, though many have left me, he actually, he got interested in it. And he said, but finally he said, "What about evolution?" And I said, "Are you willing to watch a presentation about evolution and creation versus creation?" He said, "Yeah." So we watched actually the first presentation of your father about the topic. Yeah. After 1 hour of that presentation, he was laughing about himself because he said, "It's such a nonsense evolution. I never heard the other side. It makes so sense."
Nonsensical.
Yeah. So he got converted. He came to church. He was baptized. And then going back to this picture once again, which I showed you, you see in the middle, that's our lead singer Andreas from back in the days, and he was, as I told you, a very strong Catholic. But we had some conversations, and God was working in his life, and He showed him some things, and then we had some conversations, and by God's grace, was a long way, but finally he also gave his life to Christ, and he became a Seventh-day Adventist. This was so amazing. Just one detail of that story. One day he called me up and he said, "Timo, did you know that the Catholic Church changed the commandments?" And I said, "Andreas, I've told you many times before."
You didn't listen. You didn't listen then.
Oh, he wasn't ready.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I mean.
One of these things. Yeah, exactly.
Until he was ready to accept it.
Yeah, exactly.